All eyes on Washington. We continue. I think we've got David Mercer with me now. David, are you there? Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Ethel. How are you?
I'm well. Listen, you just heard the report. I don't know if you heard it, but Michael Manuel just reporting there, you know, the president's going to speak in about less than 2 hours from now at 11 o'clock Eastern time. And basically, this thing is at a point where nobody wants to compromise. And you know, so what do you think about if, in fact, it gets down to it? I was asking David Webb when we first started, if it gets down to this plan B, where President Obama would have the option to raise the debt ceiling 3 times between now and the 2012 election, is that good for the Democrats?
Listen, we're talking about what's good for the country, and we have to honor our debt obligations and not default. I heard David earlier speaking that, you know, we can just service the debt. That is not the case. We have to, honor our obligations and let those know, you know, who we've borrowed from, that we are good for our commitments and the faith and credit of the United States.
And David Mercer, you're saying without the ability to, if you don't raise the debt ceiling, then we can't pay those creditors.
That's the case, and what's really pretty wild here is that the debt ceiling and raising the debt ceiling, the nomenclature or the language is a little unclear. But the fact is that raising the debt ceiling does not authorize one additional penny of spending on the budget. It is only coming in line with what has already been authorized legislatively by Congress in past spending. So it is only coming in line. That's why this whole... Yeah.
How so, David Mercer?
That's just a fact. You're raising the debt ceiling to match what spending has already been authorized and going out the door, as has been enacted by Congress already. From, you know, for appropriations on defense or any other expenses that the government has.
If that's already been, that ceiling has already been set, has already been raised, then what's the big fuss, David Webb?
And that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point, Othel. Is Republicans are making this a big fuss and holding it hostage to try and position or to create the sense that they are trying to cut spending and to have it their way and to use the budget or the debt ceiling issue to get what they want. But we can't afford to do that because we're putting at risk the credibility or the faith and credit of the United States in honoring its debt obligations.
You know, and I understand this, but let's clarify a couple things even in David's statements. One, the debt service is the payment on what's due. Again, by the numbers right now, we have enough money to pay both Social Security, the debt service, and have trillions left over. $74 billion on hand, $22 billion to $23 billion due for Social Security. The so-called grandma won't get paid. BS. $26 billion due in the debt service payment. The debt service payment is the payment of our obligations. So it's basically the same thing as saying, look, we've borrowed this much, we're going to pay it off. We're not defaulting on anybody. The farce.
So then, David, why don't we just raise the debt ceiling to match what we've already authorized?
Let me finish. The farce that's coming out of Washington is that there is going to be a default, end story, end of the world if we don't just continue to pay the debt service and stop acquiring more debt. We also take in $250 billion in revenues per month on average. We take in enough. What we have to do is cut in those areas where we have to cut, whether it's defense combined with entitlements and other things, so that we don't continue to accrue those costs. Military will get paid. Congress has the power constitutionally to direct the Treasury to pay the debt service. They can also make sure the military's paid, make sure Social Security and Medicaid and those
So
things.
Why not just raise the debt ceiling to meet those obligations, David?
We already have the money, David. The fact is, as of Tuesday, Treasury has $74 billion on hand. They still acquire revenues on on a daily basis, and that $74 billion, as I just outlined for you.
And why are we going to create uncertainty in the market, David?
No.
Why create uncertainty in the market when, as you're pointing out, we have it to do?
Look at the bond, the 10-year bond notes. Okay, bond yields, when they're low, shows that the market does not have that much uncertainty. And right now, yields are at 3% or less.
Come on, every Republican is screaming about uncertainty in the private sector.
Let them scream. Those are politicians. I'm doing the economic math.
Okay.
The economic math is on this. The economic math is we can do it. We can pay the debt service. And if you want to listen to the markets, when S&P or Moody's puts out contradictory reports, it's because that's all they have to go with. The fact is we can honor our obligations, but at some point we've got to stop spending because the longer term problem is insolvency.
But
and
those are two separate issues, David. Those are two separate issues.
Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
They're tied together.
Go ahead, David Mercer. Go ahead.
Those are two separate issues, spending and the raising of the debt ceiling. Raising the debt ceiling is to say unequivocally that we're going to pay what has been legislated and authorized and already committed. And in making that commitment and letting the markets know, letting our lenders know, letting everybody know that we are committed to paying that amount that we've already had go out the door. That's what people want to know. It's that simple, and we might as well just do it. Why is it not?
David, what you're missing here.
It doesn't authorize one additional penny of spending, David.
David, you raise the debt ceiling, this administration will spend it. That is a fact.
That's not true. It's already been spent and authorized, David. That's the point.
1 second. Here's what's happening. It's
you can't beat the numbers, man.
15 after the hour. Mercer, I'm going to lose your satellite feed, so I give you an opportunity right now to make some final points in terms of what do you think needs to happen to get this deal done?
Well, as you said at the top of the segment, is that we need to have the compromise, and every household listening to us now knows that when you are looking at a debt situation, you're going to cut your spending, household spending, but you're also going to look to generate revenues. You're going to close loopholes on tax subsidies and etc. Rather than borrowing money from the Chinese to pay for subsidies to oil companies that are making all-time profits. So, you need that compromise, and we need to get that compromise before August 2nd.
Yeah, well.
Perfect word, borrowing. We borrow $4.7 billion daily, 43 cents on the dollar. In order to pay, if we keep raising the debt ceiling, we have to keep borrowing to raise it. You bring up households, if you have a $10,000 credit limit, and you have a payment due of $1,500 every month.
My mom used to say that's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right. If you have a $1,500 payment every month and you pay it, you don't default, but you don't spend more.
David Webb, hold the thought. David Mercer, thank you so much. Good to see you.
It's a pleasure. Both of you have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.
You do the same.
Okay.
You guys have probably heard about this horrific